Hello everybody, and welcome back to my garage here and another video for our electrical class. So today I'm going to do things a little bit differently here. Obviously I'm going to take a seat here. I just finished putting together this new workbench here, and so I'm going to sit here and use it today and talk to you a little bit about chapter 24 and about our class. So this week will be a little bit like last week in that this is going to be somewhat of a supplement to what's already in the book. The book has some really good information in it, and if you've already read chapter 24, you know that it covers a lot of little different details about driver information systems, navigation systems. These really are some if you want to call it electrical and electronic systems on the car that can cause quite a bit of different problems and can be a little bit tricky to diagnose sometimes. There's a lot of parts to these things. There's a lot of different systems, particularly when you get into navigation stuff and lane departure, backup sensors, cameras, front cameras, rear cameras, 360-degree cameras, and just hooking up Bluetooth, your phone to the infotainment systems. So they don't even really call radios anymore. Now they call them infotainment systems because you can view pictures on there. You can connect your phone to it. You can use the navigation system on your phone, display it on the radio screen or the radio display, and so forth. And so radios have come a long way in the last few years, and they really aren't even like one piece. I think I mentioned this before. The radio, the infotainment systems nowadays may have a display, which is just a display. Then they may have a separate control button switch. Then they may have the radio behind it. And the radio actually looks like a BCM or something, just a module that plugs in. Then it may have a separate amplifier. Then it may have a separate media player like a CD player. Then they have something they call a HMI module, a human machine interface module, which really controls most of the video that goes on. Because a lot of times you can plug in your video games in different ports, particularly in an SUV or something, and where you can plug in a video game and watch things on the video screens or play games and so forth. So there's a lot of different components on there. They're processing a lot of information. So and you can plug in a lot of different things to them. So sometimes you have quite a few scenarios there where you might be literally scratching your head about what to do with it. But anyway, just a little introduction. Welcome again. And like I say, we're going to do things a little different here today. We're in chapter 24, and you have in your Moodle you have of course your assignments on there to read chapter 24, answer the 10 questions at the back of the chapter. Okay. There's only 10 questions, and then there's also, I've added this time to do the review questions. There's only 4 review questions, and I'd like for you guys to go ahead and answer those too, okay? Send those in just like normal with an email, okay? So, kind of like laid back here today in the garage, nice sunny day. So you might hear a car go by, you might hear an AWACS fly over because I live close to Tinker Air Force Base, and sometimes you hear those AWACS fly over, and if they're just right, it gets pretty loud. So my neighbor already mowed his yard this morning, so maybe we're okay there. We'll see what happens with that. All right. So I'll try not to keep you guys too long, but I want to cover a few things in chapter 24, and then I also have, like I say, something that's not in the book that I want to share with you here that's pertinent to our discussion today. So I want to say up front too again, I appreciate everybody that's staying engaged, that's working through this time of social distancing and all that kind of stuff. And I hope everybody's safe and well and so forth. All right, so chapter 24, page 353. Forgive me for looking out here sometimes, seeing what's going on outside there. So learning objectives on 353, just a reminder here. We should be able to discuss the diagnosis of oil pressure lamps, temperature lamps, warning brake lamps, and other instrument, analog dash instruments. Okay. Discuss the operation of heads-up display, night vision, digital electronic displays. Identify the meaning of dash warning lights. Explain the operation diagnostics on OnStar. Okay. Backup cameras, backup sensors, lane departure warning systems, navigation systems, and how to troubleshoot malfunctioning dash instrumentation. All right, so this is all part of our ASE preparation and test that we hope we can pass at some point. Okay, they do ask some questions in the electrical test, particularly about a lot of these things in here, and particularly these gauges and sensors and things like that, dash warning lights. So on the next page, he starts talking about dash warning symbols. And so, you know, they have a lot of different symbols now on the dash. So it doesn't say hot, cold, pressure, whatever so much. It's just a lot of these universal symbols they use nowadays. I think you guys are probably familiar with that. But it does, as he says in the book here, cause some confusion with the customer sometimes. And it seems like sometimes when a new model comes out, a new car model comes out, sometimes they come up with some new ones. And, you know, even I have to look them up. The owner's manual there, again, is a good place to look, see what some of these symbols mean. Sometimes it's a service that it needs or so forth. So a lot of different things like that. But there's a multitude of different symbols, and different manufacturers sometimes use a little bit different ones, but they can be confusing sometimes. So that's, especially if it's an intermittent light that's coming on, it's helpful if the customer has a picture of it sometimes, and so you can see which light was actually coming on, because they really get confused. They really do. And even if it comes up on the display and says, you know, service trash control or something like that, the customer may get that confused too. So you really have to be persistent with your service advisor and the customer sometimes and saying, hey, what did this really say? If it's not on now, which most of the time it's not. Yeah, most of the time this is some kind of intermittent deal and they're bringing it to you, you know, when it's working okay. I saw a post recently on a Facebook page that I follow on for GM dealers, technicians, right? And they brought this car in April, right, just this month, and said back when it was snowing that the windshield wipers would quit sometimes during heavy snow. And, you know, so you just get, people do that sometimes. They didn't bring it in back when it was snowing. They waited to April when it was nice and sunny outside and bring it in. So I don't understand that. I'm just telling you what happens, okay? People do that sometimes. Oh, they say, you know, I should get that checked. I should bring that in, get it checked. So, point is, some of this stuff's intermittent, and even in that case, they said, hey, you hadn't done it since it snowed. Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I've had very similar complaints on cars of, you know, this only happens at a certain time, and now's not the time that it happens. So, particularly if it's under warranty, you know, people think it's free and they want to get it checked. So, all these different warning lights, it's important to know which one you're looking for there. Now, on that same note, a lot of things will set a code, okay? But if it's been 3, 4, 5 months since it happened, that code may not be there anymore, okay? If it was just last week, there may be a history code in there. But anyway, it's always good to check codes for any kind of electrical complaint. Any kind of electrical complaint people have. Do a vehicle scan, check all the codes in the whole car, okay? I wish we could do that and show you, but some of you have been in some of my classes before where we've used GDS. You know, GDS2 systems, you can scan the whole car just real quick and every module on it and see what's going on. Okay, so different lights, they have all different types of warning lights, and there's a test for all of them, okay, in your service information. All right, moving on, page 356, driver information systems. Yeah. There's a variety of things can happen there, a variety of different types of displays on the dash. Some of them are just lights, some of them give one little screen, like my Yukon has one screen over there on the left side that may say several different things. It may say check engine oil low, it may say check engine oil pressure, it may say brake light, or it can come up with several different things. It's just a little square rectangle display. Some of them have it underneath, like where the odometer is. It'll say service traction control again, or stability control, or daytime running light, bulb out, or whatever. So there's all kinds of things now that try to inform, right, the customer that there's a problem. And so those are pretty good deals. Because sometimes they ignore amber lights, right, which mean caution, and sometimes they ignore red warning lights, which means stop, right? Any kind of red warning light means stop, get it fixed now. Okay? So, driver information systems, there's a lot of different things that can show up there. So I'm just going to touch base on that a little bit. They talk about different other warning lamps there, difference between analog instrumentation on page 359. Then he touches just a little bit about network communications. Okay, so again, all these modules on these cars talk to each other. The instrument panel cluster is a key module in the whole loop of things in network communication. The IPC, we call it, is central. It's getting information from all kinds of modules so it can display, you know, temperature and engine temperature, outside temperature, obviously speed, you know, and oil pressure. So it comes from the engine control module, comes from the transmission control module, may come from the air conditioning control module information. Just yeah, there's going to be a network connections there for that and so forth. All right. And particular tests for that if it doesn't work. He talks about some stepper motors there and analog gauges. All right, we'll move through that a little bit. He explains how that works. Then he jumps right into like a heads-up display on page 361. Pickup truck running by there. Heads-up displays. Those are pretty cool. It's just got a display there that shoots on a mirror, flips it up on the windshield. Looks pretty neat. Have a little whiz-bang thing there, but most of those are configurable, where you can put different information on there, like the radio, tachometer, speed, etc., etc. So, quite not a real popular thing, but some cars have them. Even my son's old Grand Prix 2005 has that. Okay, so they've had those for a long time. But anyway, talks a little bit about that there. Then he talks about night vision. So that's, you know, they actually put that on some Cadillacs. There's a picture of that on page, or figure 2434, this night vision camera that they had a long time ago. It was kind of a thermal imaging type thing. So, you know, we would pick up like if the deer was in the road or something like that. So it had to be something that had some amount of heat to it. It wasn't a camera like a photo camera. It was a thermal imaging camera. Cadillac used that back in the early 2000s, okay? And they didn't use it very long, okay? And it's not because it didn't work, okay? Think any other reason why they might do away with that? Seeing where it's mounted at there on the front of the car? Well, obviously it had to be on the front of the car. That camera cost about $2,000, right? So every time they bumped into something and broke the grill on the car and damaged that camera, that was an extra $2,000 the insurance company had to pay, you know, to get it replaced. Plus, I mean, just for the camera, then you got to get it put on, calibrated, all that kind of stuff. So it added a great deal of cost to any kind of front-end collision there. And it was only the thermal imaging. So we're going to talk a little more about some more advanced stuff in just a minute. But yeah, I replaced a few of those. You know, you can even get sometimes maybe a hard shell bug or something at 70 miles an hour goes through the grill and hits that camera, and there you go. You've got a $2,000 camera that's broken. It doesn't work anymore. So anyway, that happens sometimes. Digital electronic display operation, page 364. So there's several different types of displays, and everything from a CRT, cathode ray tube, like a TV screen, and and touch screens, LCD, and all kinds of stuff. So it doesn't really matter that much what they're made out of. It's just you really got to be able to just test and see if they how to test them, right? Typically, any kind of display or any type of electrical module really just needs power and ground to it, and then some type of data line to it. Again, okay. We say that over and over again, but when it comes to electronics, okay, in modules and displays, you really just got to have three things: power and ground and some type of data line. Now, it might be class 2, it may be high-speed CAN network, or it may be something they call a LIN network, okay, LIN, linear interface network, okay. So there could be several different types of networks there, but they're all transmitting some type of communication, and they all have particular testing procedures for them, okay? And again, like I say, a lot of these can set trouble codes. All right, I won't spend too much time on those different types of displays. He lists them all out here on page 364 and 365. Then he shows some more about that on 366. Now, these little tips that he puts in here and these case studies that he puts in here, excuse me, are really pretty good. So take notes of some of those about testing things and about checking the history on a car, particularly like it says here on 369. There's a case study about speedometer didn't work right, and looking at the history. Somebody put a different transmission in here, and the reluctor wheel on the transmission had a different number of teeth on it than it's supposed to have. So therefore the speedometer doesn't read right, okay? So that's where checking the vehicle service history comes into play. I can't tell you how many times I've fixed a car with a visual inspection, okay, nothing technical there, just a visual inspection, and checking the history on the car. Has the car been to the body shop before, particularly with all these sensors on the bumpers and the grills and so forth? Sensors and cameras in the windshield. Has the windshield been replaced? Does it have the right windshield in it? A lot of these cars that have the cameras up by the rear view mirror that look for the lanes out in front of you, okay, they take a particular type of windshield or glass. If it doesn't have the right kind of glass in it, it's not going to work right, okay? So you have to look at all different, you have to know how these systems work and how other parts affect it and so forth. It talks in here even about bumpers being repainted. You've got those ultrasonic sensors in the front and the rear for parking assist. If you got too much paint on those sensors, they don't work right, okay? So all that makes a difference. So you got to know where this car's been, who's been working on it, what's been done to it, and that'll help you out a whole lot. Unless you just got a clear-cut problem with the camera and it's got a B101D in it, and you know it needs a new camera. It's terrible that I know that code, all right? But a B101D, it just means it's internal fault, okay? I'll tell you something else I ran into. This is not in the book, but those sensors on the front and the bumper, those little round ultrasonic sensors, I had a 2019, I think it was, pickup truck that they had driven in a hailstorm, okay? And of course, I didn't know about this until like a week into this deal, right? But this front sensors didn't work right. And for some reason, that particular system, it had forward the front, forward the back, but that particular system didn't set a code. It wouldn't set a code for that sensor, okay? Because it didn't have an open circuit. It wasn't a shorted circuit. And that's about all the computer could see on those. It just knew that something wasn't right. I can't really remember what code it was now, but it says some kind of code, but it didn't tell me which sensor it was. Sometimes it'll tell you it's the left front outer or the left front middle. Some of the codes, if it's a circuit problem, it'll tell you which circuit it is and which code. This one didn't tell me which position it was. So I had 8 sensors that could have been either one of them. So like I say, after a long drawn out thing, finally found out that they'd driven it through a hailstorm, and also come out to find out from technical assistance that just a little bit of a dent in one of those sensors caused by a bug or a hailstone would make it not work right. Okay, it was just sending the wrong signal. Yeah, it took about a week to figure that out. Yeah, seriously, a week. Technical assistants told me one time, excuse me, to get another truck just like it and actually just switch the whole bumper from trunk to truck to try to figure out which sensor it was. Yeah, that's pretty easy to tell somebody when you're sitting behind a desk and they don't have to do that, try to get paid for that. But that's another story. I'm just telling you what can happen there, okay? Telling you some real world situations of what can happen. But, so, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So I ordered 8 new sensors, that's what I did. And I started putting new ones in one at a time till I found out, till the problem went away. It came up with some message, well, I know what it did. It came up with a message that said, you know, that it was blocked. That there was a blockage in front of it. It was seeing something that really wasn't there. That's what it was doing. Yeah, it was a message that came up said, you know, caution, something's in the way. And so I started replacing sensors one at a time until it finally went away. Then we finally figured out, you know, like I say, the rest of the story with the driving in the hailstorm and all that kind of stuff. So that can be a little challenging sometimes. A little challenging, it's hard to make money on stuff like that. But anyway, these case studies is where we came from there on that. Of where did this car come from, what's been done to it, how does all these things affect these electronics? Because these electronics are very sensitive, things like that. Okay, does that make sense? Again, this is something that's not exactly in the book, and that's why I'm talking about it. The book's here in black and white and blue and yellow, and you can read it. Fuel gauges, navigation systems on page 370. That's a fun thing. I use them all the time. I think it's great. You know, 24 satellites orbiting the Earth. It takes at least, usually it's like 3 satellites to triangulate your position, okay? And so it does it down within probably about 10 feet or so nowadays. It's pretty good stuff. I've got them, say one of my, well, I've got one kind in my Jeep and I've got another kind in my Yukon. So you guys are probably familiar with those systems. Sometimes you obviously can use your phone for maps and so forth. It's pretty neat. Okay. Again, he's got some little freak tech tips and things in here about that. So window tinting, yes, sometimes window tinting can have an effect on antennas and so forth. Most of the antennas nowadays are on the roof or someplace like that, where it's hard to interrupt the signal. But I have had some that were in the headliner before and that were installed incorrectly, okay? And if depends on what type it uses. Sometimes they use a magnetic north type sensor for a compass, so it has to be oriented a certain way for it to work. But nowadays, most of the time they use the GPS signal to get a compass signal, okay? Even though they're not directly related, but if the car is going a certain direction and on the street, then it can tell whether that's north or south or east or west through the GPS. So it's not a magnetic north type thing. So there's 2 different ways of getting a compass, okay, which usually shows up on your navigation screen. All right. So, but even if you just have a regular compass in the car, some of them run off the GPS instead of a magnetic north type sensor. Okay. So this is something to know about. A lot of different applications and software and things involved in these navigation systems. Most of the factory navigation systems are, well, by the time they're 2 years old, they're obsolete because maps are changing all the time. And so I know in General Motors you can buy an updated either CD or a jump drive or even an SD card that has maps in it, and you can upgrade, the map system on them. That's one of the advantages of using your phone, connecting it to the infotainment system, because typically the ones on your phone are updated more often and they're also less expensive. All right, OnStar, pretty cool deal. Came out with OnStar a long time ago. Has a lot of neat features. It's a monthly subscription. That's how they keep it running. Obviously, you can do a lot of things. You got apps on your phone now. You can unlock the doors, start the car, etc., etc., etc. Sometimes there's a misconception about OnStar in the areas of shutting off a vehicle. Fact is, they can shut it down, okay? But it takes an act of Congress just about, if you know what I mean, right? Okay? The police have to call them if the car's been stolen. They can locate the car, but the police have to do that, okay? And even when they shut it down with the police chase involved, they monitor where the car is, how fast they're going, if it's a safe place to do it, etc., etc. Okay? I've had customers come in before wanting either disconnected so that their husband couldn't find them, right? Or wanted it connected and wanted the information so they could find their husband or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so like going through a divorce or something like that, or who knows what. We don't get into personal matters too much there, but yeah, that doesn't work like that. It's on, and yeah, GM knows where you're at. Oh, by the way, yeah, that reminds me, there's another little video that I've posted on this week's lesson that I want you to watch, and it's Washington Post did a little investigating, and they pulled some information out of a Chevrolet Volt, actually, a 17 model, I believe it was, and found out that GM Motors does have a lot of information on where you go, who you talk to on your phone, contact information, photos, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, that's on your assignment this week too, to watch that video and write a little story about it for me, okay? What you think about that. It's pretty interesting. So do watch that other video. It's only about 5 minutes long, but OnStar plays a key part in that. And in that you'll see they take out that HMI module, okay, that I mentioned a while ago. They take that module out and then they tap into it, okay? And so pretty interesting. A lot of things going on there. So I want to know what you think about that. All right. Back in the day when we first came out with OnStar, it was an option. We had to install the hardware. That was a lot of fun. But nowadays, they all come with it on there now. Backup cameras is just that. It's a backup camera, backup sensors, etc. Talks about the repainted bumper there again on page 375. Then it goes into lane departure systems. There's several different versions of those lane departure systems. And they all behave a little differently. They all have the same purpose, try to keep you on the road, okay? But again, they vary in name and function sometimes. So troubleshooting, again, is like everything else. It's going to have a code in it. Be sure to check bulletins anytime too for these things, because sometimes there's some updates. Some more tech tips there. Then it gets into fuel gauge diagnosis. Okay, that pretty much gets us through the chapter. All right, we're about 30 minutes here. Questions? Okay. Anytime you got questions, you can send me an email or something like that. It'll be fine. I'll try to answer it. So that's just a little bit of an overview of chapter 24, some of the things going on there. What I have extra here I want to share with you today is from Motor Magazine, okay? And talking about autonomous vehicles, right? And some of these lane departure systems is part of that. So there's an article in here about true autonomous vehicles, okay? Ion Electronics.